The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of AIHA. AIHA does not endorse any guest or the entity that they represent. On this episode of Healthier Workplaces, using social media to promote OEHS, we're joined by Instagram's classy chemist, Dr. Yasmin Daniels, coming up next.
Meet Alice Hamilton. She was an early pioneer in what we know today as industrial hygiene. Her work had a profound impact on AIHA's earliest members. AIHA's Hamilton Club recognizes organizations that continue her work. These corporate partners use innovation and expertise to shape the future of worker health and safety. Partners receive tiered benefits of access, recognition, contribution, and brand exposure. The Hamilton Club is the center of support and investment between club partners, AIHA, and its members. This is where the future of the profession shines the brightest. For more information, visit aiha.info/Hamilton Club.
Welcome, Yasmin, to the Healthier Workplaces show. Really happy to have you here. And you know, uh, today's topic is one that's near and dear to us on the show, discussing STEM. So I guess I'll start out by asking you what inspired you to pursue a career in STEM, particularly chemistry, and what led you to become an industrial hygienist?
That's a great question. And first off, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and excited to talk about STEM and industrial hygiene because I'm passionate about them both. So I chose chemistry because I honestly was always good at it. And when I took organic chemistry, I got a better understanding of how chemistry worked from like a subatomic level. So things like what do electrons like to do? How will they move in certain directions based on, them wanting to delocalize their charges, things like that. So I spent a few years doing bench chemistry research. So it was just me and my test tubes, my solvents, my pipettes. And then I realized that I wanted to connect more with people, and that kind of is what led me to industrial hygiene. So, believe it or not, as a chemist, I didn't know too much about industrial hygiene, although I was practicing a lot of lab safety and environmental safety in my lab concepts and my procedures. But I didn't really understand or have an idea of the term industrial hygiene until I started to seek out other opportunities in STEM. And when I came across industrial hygiene, I was really excited about it because I actually am an analytical chemist. And so industrial hygienists, they get the opportunity to utilize lots of cool gadgets in the field when they do their sampling. And so that really appealed to me because it made me realize that I could still be a chemist and connect with people, which is what I was seeking at the time. So I applied for a position as an industrial hygienist, and I got it. I got the opportunity to learn on the job, which was another really cool thing with industrial hygiene, is that you don't always have to go to school for industrial hygiene. You can actually be trained on the job. And so I did that for a few years until I got to the point where I thought that I had enough experience to apply for becoming a certified industrial hygienist. So I took the exam and I passed it, and I was thrilled. So that's the story behind that.
I mean, and it's interesting too, because a lot of the people that we bring on the show that are certified industrial hygienists have different but similar stories where they hadn't began their career pursuit as I'm going to become an industrial hygienist. Rarely, actually, I think that's rarely the case.
Mhm.
People come from other disciplines and then they end up there. To that end though, you said that you are a people person, like to get out there. So we're big fans of your social presence.
Mhm.
Your classy chemist on Instagram, is definitely a strong presence on social media. So how do you believe platforms like Instagram and other social media platforms can benefit the STEM, OE, HS students and professionals? To help actually motivate people to get into this career.
Yep, that's another very good question. Thank you so much for being a fan, as you say. But I'll go on record for saying I'm not exactly a social media expert, at least not yet. But honestly, whenever I make a social media post on, occupational, environmental, health and safety, or OEHS, like you said, there's always someone new who messages me to ask me about the field. And we know that people nowadays are, they spend like hours on social media. So why not use it to bring more awareness to a field that we know spans across many STEM disciplines? And with industrial hygiene, you can have just sort of a basic background in science. And as I mentioned before, you can get a lot of on-the-job training. So I know this question talks about OEHS in general, but if you look at industrial hygiene specifically, because I am an industrial hygienist and this is AIHA, I can tell you that many times people have approached me to ask me what I do. And when I say I'm an industrial hygienist, the immediate response is, what's that? Or is that like a dental assistant or, someone who cleans or something like that? And so when I tell people what it is that I do, they're shocked because they don't have, familiarity with the field. So I think something like social media, Instagram, Twitter or X, Facebook, TikTok even are great platforms for spreading the word on what OEHS professionals do, how important we are to everyday work in society. And I think it's a great tool if folks can utilize it.
Here's a quick view of your Classy Chemist Instagram page, and yeah, there's some really interesting posts on there.
Thank you.
It's exciting. So let's, are there any particular challenges, I guess, or misconceptions that you've encountered utilizing social media for promoting awareness about STEM-related topics? I mean, obviously, it's social media sometimes is a double-edged sword, right? It can be good and it can be not great sometimes. So,
Yep, and
what have you found?
you're absolutely right. It can be good and it can be not so good. So I would say maybe the first misconception is that you have to be an expert at something that you're reporting on. I think that's a misconception. I'm a chemist and a certified industrial hygienist, but I love sharing interesting things about all STEM topics. So I think for maybe those who are looking, at this interview or just looking for inspiration, as long as you are responsible about using credible resources, perhaps not plagiarizing, I think sharing a broad range of topics can be very valuable. So, as I said before, it's a misconception to assume that someone has to be the absolute expert about something to be able to discuss it on social media. Of course, you should probably make an attempt to relate it to something within your brand or your subject, matter expertise. If you're reporting on it, that would be a useful strategy. Sometimes also people think that because they're branded to one field that they can't venture into another area. I think that's also wrong. Social media has created, I think, what is a culture of this 5-second attention span, or what I like to call trend exhaustion. And so if you're not captivating your audience in the first, let's say 5 seconds or so, then they scroll past and poof, there goes your impression and the algorithm is no longer in your favor. Also, if you sometimes overutilize like one style of posting or one topic, or even if you, let's say, jump on a trend too late, you run the risk of the same or a similar outcome. And I personally experienced this a lot. So I think, with that said, you have to take these things into consideration. And these are some of the challenges you face when you work or you utilize social media to expand on your brand or share your content or, whatever purpose it is you're using it for. So you have to keep these things in the back of your mind. And I'm constantly thinking about that stuff when I'm posting and, creating content.
So are there other strategies you think about as far as, keeping your content engaging and informative?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of strategies. There are lots of strategies that you can think about. Let's see, you can start with looking for things that are trending. And I know I kind of just said, you could potentially overuse things that are trending. So there's a fine line. So yes, people are interested in things that are trending, but that also has to be timely. You could also look for hashtags. I think that's kind of like an old one. A lot of people do that. You can learn from others. So you can not only learn to get inspired by what other people are saying, maybe those within your field, but you can also learn what's not working. So if you see someone else who constantly posts things that people are generally not interested in, it might be a good idea not to really go down that rabbit hole also. Um, let's see, being authentic, I think goes a long way, being relevant. So again, even while you're adapting trends, perhaps putting your own spin on things could help to increase, traction or, the audience's attention. So these are some of the things that I can think of off the top of my head.
I mean, is it a challenge for you to balance, your professional responsibilities, and maintaining a fairly high-profile social media presence? How do you do it all?
Yeah, it is. The short answer is yes. It is a challenge. I won't sugarcoat it. It's no easy task. Um, and you actually haven't even added like the personal responsibilities. So you said, balancing
Sure.
professional
Right.
and social media, but then you throw in the personal responsibilities, that's a whole other ball game, and things become even more complicated. So as for professional responsibilities, I feel like there's a lot of time, and I speak for myself, but I know others maybe experience the same thing. There's a lot of time that goes into determining, let's say, the accuracy of the content that you share, in addition to all of the other creative elements that you put into your posts. So, that's sort of a responsibility of you as the professional. It's extremely time consuming, and honestly, in all transparency, I've slowed down a bit ever since I became a mom of two. So I will say that it does take a lot of time, and if you are willing to put in the time, then I think, go for it. I think also, as I mentioned before, that authenticity goes a long way. It's not always necessary, however, to do like a deep dive into every single piece of information that you want to share. But if you commit to sharing something, then do it with purpose. Let the purpose be something more than just that you feel obligated to report on something because you're the professional, or it's your niche. Maybe, or even because Jane Doe is doing it, and so she got 10,000 likes, so maybe we should jump on this trend. So I think, like I said, being a little bit authentic, it creates your own niche, and people start to gravitate towards you for the things and the type of content that you're sharing. And so I kind of segued from the question, how I balance my professional and social media responsibilities. It's a fine line, and it's a toss up. I don't really have a sort of like a rule of thumb, but I kind of take it day by day. And if there are days that I really just, or even weeks, honestly, that I feel like I really can't balance posting things on social media because my work is very demanding, I take a break. And other times I have a little bit of a lighter load, and I say, okay, here I can maybe batch my content, and I will maybe schedule my posts. So I do that a lot. I schedule my posts a
Okay.
lot. A nice tool I think that social media has.
Hmm.
So I wake up very early. I have a very packed day with, home life and then work. And also I don't have time to necessarily post during the high peak times, right? Because, the algorithm sees all
Sure.
of that stuff. And so I think social media, especially Instagram, has this ability for you to schedule a post
Hmm.
when you believe it, your followers will interact with your post. So that's another really cool feature that I utilize a lot.
And that was going to be my follow-up, but you kind of covered it. Frequency, like so your frequency, a lot of it's determined by your availability, right? Uh,
Yeah, it,
as
it
far
is.
as
It is. Initially, it wasn't that way. Initially, I was like maybe a lot of the maybe more high profile content creators. I used to study the algorithm or even study the interactions, look at insights and see, okay, who's sharing, and do I need to interact with them more in the comments? And, there's all these little things that you do to increase engagement. But I honestly just don't have the time to do that anymore. And so, as you said, the frequency of my posting really is dictated by my time and my schedule. And it may not work in my favor in terms of being the most popular content creator in this niche. But I think it's still, because I'm able to hold true to the authenticity of the content that I create or the posts that I make, I think I still retain a pretty decent amount of, people who are interested in what I have to say.
Yeah, and that's probably paramount. I mean, the authenticity is really the key, right? It's,
Yep.
if you're just there, just, searching for follows, it's not real.
Yeah, it's
So,
not.
I'm going to switch gears a little. So how do you adapt to trends or developments in the intersection of STEM and industrial hygiene and social media? So I guess it's related, but it's a little different, because obviously there's a lot of technology, really major improvements and improvements and just innovations in a lot of the test equipment and just the technologies that we have at our availability. The advent of AI, everything else going on.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, what is that meaning for you as far as how you deal with these trends?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I think AI is not going anywhere anytime soon. So I think it's something that we probably need to be more um, open to. And I think that it can actually be a very beneficial tool. If anything, it could provide maybe some background information for whatever it is that you're looking to share, or maybe information that you're potentially unfamiliar with, but you want to gain a quicker familiarity with. So I honestly like AI. I think it's a really good tool, but obviously everything in moderation. So I don't think it's okay for someone to, take everything from AI verbatim and sort of like use it as their own. So I think you still need to sort of put your own spin on things, and ensure that you're, again, being authentic in what you're presenting. Um, let's see, the intersection of STEM, IH, and social media. That's an interesting topic for me because I constantly try to come up with ways in my mind for how I can make those things sort of cross paths, without necessarily like just being a hardcore chemist and like just talking about industrial hygiene. Because at least for me and my platform, I have people who are interested in these things separately. So I try to be strategic in not boring the other group. So it really becomes a task trying to creatively intertwine them. So, and while staying relevant with things like trends. So, one thing that I did, maybe last year, it might have been 2 years ago, was there was a trend that I think AIHA may have started it, that said, "Tell me you're an IH without telling me you're an IH," and it was like a sort of like a hashtag that a lot of different fields were using, and that was a really cool trend because you got to
Hmm.
be a little bit more creative. And so I used this. There was this music trend that was going on, and you may have seen the video. It's probably down in my archives now, but it's basically me with a respirator dropping from the ceiling, and then I have my earplugs in, and I have my Tyvek suit on, and I'm kind of like bopping to music, but I don't say anything, and I'm just dancing. And so people are looking at this video, and understanding what industrial hygiene is, and they're sort of, you know, putting the pieces together.
Hmm.
And it was nice because it was something that was trending. It was something that was new, but it also allowed, maybe your average person to see what industrial hygienists are doing and what they look like, and maybe even start to spark a conversation for asking questions like, well, what is she doing? I thought she was a chemist. What does industrial hygiene mean? What is STEM and IH? What do they have to do with each other? So these are the types of questions that I like to provoke with my posts.
So what advice would you give to prospective and current STEM and OEHS students and professionals who want to leverage social media,
Mhm.
I guess, to enhance their careers and make a positive impact on the field via social media? It's something that you seem to be very adept at.
Yeah. I think I would say just go for it. Be careful though that you're not recreating exactly what someone else is already doing, because that could actually happen unintentionally. Inspiration goes a long way. So whereas you're watching all of these videos and posts of someone who you really adore and maybe aspire to be like, and you go onto your platform and you start to create your own posts and they start to look exactly like this other person, that might be a little frowned upon. But like I said, authenticity, there's always usually a way to put your own spin on things. Let your voice shine. Think about your true purpose. Why is it that you're sharing what you're sharing? What message do you have to tell? It's kind of like, and I didn't really talk much about this in this interview, but I have a PhD in chemistry. And so one of the things that I struggled with when doing my thesis or my dissertation is, what is my dissertation going to say that's so different than all the other theses that have been done already in this field? And so my professor and my advisor at the time said to me, there's always room for your voice and your view and your vision. And that kind of stuck with me. And I think that even though, there are maybe 1,000, let's just say, I'm just throwing out a random number, but if there are 1,000 industrial hygienists who just so happen to be chemists, it doesn't necessarily mean that what I have to say isn't relevant or isn't going to be unique to me and my personality or the way that I like to say things. I may have like a funny accent that people are drawn to. I don't know. I may tell jokes and people like that. So usually when people are looking at social media, they're looking for something that's, uplifting or funny or something that they want to share or something that they can internalize and then regurgitate to someone else in layman's terms. So these are some things that you think about. Perhaps the people who are on social media already are not doing these things. So that could be your contribution to that niche. So that's my advice.
That's great advice. Anyway, I think this has been very timely and something that got to believe both students and people that are currently in the field are going to take this to heart, because it's obviously the social media impact that you can have is really important on your advancement in your career, I believe, for all of us as professionals. So this is great. So Dr. Yasmin Daniels, thanks so very much for joining us on this episode of Healthier Workplaces, and I hope to see more of you soon.
Thank you very much. It was awesome being here and great talking to you.
Great. We'll be watching you on Instagram. Remember, you can follow her at Classy Chemist on Instagram. Thanks very much. So that's our show for this week. Until next time, I'm Bob Krell. Stay healthy.